Mr. Wissing, I think we are ready to go. Maybe just introduce you and invite you to start the session.
Well, John, it's an honor and a pleasure. This is really an honor to speak to this many coaches and both the folks that are involved in athletics across the continent. It's the first experience for me, and I appreciate Kyle hooking us up. I'm going to share my screen here, and I'll give you a little quick background of who I am.
Would be great.
Okay, can you see that clearly?
Yes.
Okay. Although I'm a dean at a college, my proudest moment, I'm a registered respiratory therapist. And what that means is I've been treating lung and heart disease, and this is my 49th year. I have an appointment in medicine at the LSU Health, which is a medical school here in town. I teach most of their pulmonary physiology and pathophysiology. I'm a runner, a marathon runner, and been involved in exercise my whole life. And I do a fair amount of nutritional science training in our public health program. So as I mentioned, this is going on my 49th year. So I hope you'll enjoy this. There's going to be some new information, I hope, and then some that you know, and it's sort of a nice mix. But why study exercise? It's pretty straightforward. Once you understand exercise, we tend to live a healthier life, and you as coaches can better understand the athletics response to exercise, which results in better coaching. So there's a reason we need to know this material. And I stole this off the internet, but it points out there is so many benefits to exercise. And I speak of exercise for anybody, not just athletes, but anybody that moves, keeps moving, will stay out of the nursing home center later. And we'll glean these benefits that we see on the screen here. What do you think the difference between these two people could be? We have the lady on the left is a sedentary lifestyle, and the lady on the right is what we call aerobically fit. And the primary difference these two people is the size of their heart, their ability to the heart to pump more blood. The lady on the right simply pumps more blood per minute than the lady on the left. And that's as a result of aerobic conditioning. And the lady on the right her heart will allow to continue to pump blood longer and longer and run a longer distance. We're going to talk about how this happens. This guy is obviously in dire straits. If you encounter this type of person in a hospital setting, you've got some serious challenges in motivation, in life choices, food choices. He's the epitome of someone that is going to die early from multiple diseases. He's at risk for heart disease, diabetes, cancer, stroke, just to mention a few. But he's happy. But he is the extreme of one end of our non-athletic individual that has a lot of work to do. In my experience, he probably will never become thin or aerobically fit. And here in America, it used to be primarily America, where people are continually to be obese or overweight. I mean, 60% of our country is overweight, or 30% is obese. That is occurring in other countries too. As Western diet shifts over to the European countries, Asian countries, and African, we're seeing weight gain across the whole globe, especially in children. And I can't speak for your countries specifically in terms of teen obesity, but over here, it's almost a public health emergency. And part of the reason we're heavy is because food, our Western diet, has gotten to be tasty, and sugar, fat, and salt. And I'm going to point out to all of us in this audience that no matter what country you live in, about 2.5 teaspoons of salt is what is recommended on a daily intake. And just this sandwich alone has a teaspoon. Just to give you an example of one sandwich that contain all the salt you need for the rest of the day. And in this case, it has almost 80 grams of fat, and a healthy intake of fat, regardless of your athletic capacity, is about 40 grams, 40 to 50 grams per day. And this sandwich alone has almost 80, plus 1,000 calories. So part of the reason we're heavy over here and in other countries is our food choices. And obesity is a complex combination of not only genetics, plays a huge role, but our lifestyle and the types of food we eat, and they all kind of play together to create someone who may or may not be obese. And here's the complications of obesity. And again, we're talking shortly here on an athletic body that shouldn't have these complications. But I think as coaches, you deal with kids that are heavy or getting to be heavy. We need to teach them there's long-term complications of being heavy, which are listed on the screen. Over here in the United States, metabolic syndrome is a combination of high cholesterol, high fat in the bloodstream, high blood pressure, and diabetes. And that's the prevalent disorder that's occurring due to our sedentary and obesity lifestyle. The question really comes, and this applies to young athletes, I think, is why it is so hard to live a heart healthy lifestyle. Why people find it difficult to exercise, to eat well. Even the beginning athlete, what's challenging them to get healthy? And there is a whole bunch of them. And this slide just shows just a handful of issues that we're faced with every day, especially adults, more so than the kids that you're coaching. The families of these kids you're coaching, the moms and dads and brothers and sisters might be facing these barriers to live in a positive lifestyle. And they bring this back to the athletic kid. They're going to live in a house that perhaps the parents and the siblings are making the wrong decisions. And so they're influenced by some of these barriers to living a healthy lifestyle. So the weight control is really a simple solution. And that is not found in books, diet books. Since 1954, every year in the United States, one of the top 10 books has been sold has been a diet-related book. And research shows that they may work temporarily, but there's no one diet that works in the long run and keeps the person weight loss off. These books here are very popular over the years, and the patient will lose about whatever but in a year they're right back where they were. And science has showed us that. So the answer to weight control and obesity and whatnot, and even if you're in your young athlete, if they're overweight, a book is not the answer. Okay. There's a much easier approach to weight management. Very simple. And that is, no matter where you are in the globe, our bodies are designed to consume about 55% carbohydrates. And again, preferred what we call complex carbohydrates, like an apple is a complex, where a candy bar is a simple carbohydrate. Protein, which is your meats, and about 20 to 30% of your fats. What you're looking at here, folks, is what our bodies, no matter, again, what race, where you live, is designed to burn this type of fuel. Now, we adjust this fuel, and I'll talk about that when we exercise, and I'll point out a little bit more detail, but that's how we're designed to eat. And even simpler, if you take in 3,000 calories and you burn 3,000, you're going to have no change in body weight. If you take in 4,000, you burn 2,000 a day, you're going to gain weight. And it goes the opposite. If you take in 2,000, you burn 3,000, you're going to decrease body weight. You can't argue with that. That's pretty straightforward physiology. And so you can see exercise plays a huge component in weight management in addition to nutrition. But for people to make a choice of a healthy lifestyle, for an athlete to make a choice to pursue an athletic career and live and eat and work and exercise healthy, it's really a change in attitude. It's not a book. It's not, it is a mindset that I'm going to become, or I am healthy. I'm going to become an athlete and work accordingly. And again, overseeing all this is good coaching. So it's not just the person's attitude, it's the help and the mentoring from the coach that helps the person maintain that attitude about I'm going to live a healthy lifestyle to that I'm living a healthy lifestyle. So it's really a mindset. I think if many of you have run long distance, you know, your body about mile 19, at least in theory, they say that's pretty well where you depleted your glucose, your sugar, and electrolytes, and your fluids. The only thing brings you in after that is your mind, your head, and your brain. So I run many miles where my body's depleted, but my brain will bring me in. So there's a big connection between attitude and sports. Like this guy, he just didn't wake up one morning and decide I'm going to get in shape and go to the gym and got in shape in a week. This going from left to right. This guy had a major life-changing event in his head. The mindset, he got coached, he worked out properly and gained, for his size and weight, in my opinion, the right amount of muscle and in shape. But I can't overemphasize how it took tremendous mindset to get him to go from left to right. So as we move here shortly to talk about the athlete, you know, a positive lifestyle that we should all, you know, is management of our stress, and our young athletes have it. As we know now, post-COVID, stress, anxiety, and depression is up across the globe, especially on young folks. Sleep hygiene, where you get your appropriate amount of sleep. And that's a whole lecture in itself, is how to achieve good sleep hygiene. An aerobic exercise, and we're going to talk about that here shortly. And again, a healthy diet, which is based on the right choices, portion control, a lot of plant-based foods, things like that. And again, minimum use of stimulants and drugs. So now the athlete. These guys obviously have worked out, been coached. They're very aerobic. They can sustain quick sprinting because they're both aerobic and anaerobic. And we're going to define those terms here shortly. And they the epitome of a person in aerobic shape. And here we got someone that is muscular, that has a good anaerobic capacity. It's able to short sprints and move that ball down the court. Big difference between these two athletes in terms of cardiopulmonary physiology and muscle physiology, and proteins in the muscle and the ability of the muscle to utilize oxygen. These two athletes have a different physiology. Again, aerobic training, which is where you burn your oxygen optimally. As you take in your oxygen from the air, your cells in your body utilizes that oxygen, and you have a long duration capacity for exercise. You can run, work out a long period of time. And again, it's low force. And the bottom line on this one on the left is the adaptation. The cardiovascular system, heart, adapts by getting larger, putting out more blood, pumping longer, and more blood per unit time. And the guy on the right is mainly using weight, in a short duration and more anaerobic than aerobic. And he utilizes oxygen in a different way, burns less oxygen per minute than the guy on the left because he's working a different type of exercise. So the athlete that is in good shape, core strength, when he or she's injured, the physical therapist or the sports medicine athlete trainer, whoever, can repair this person and bring him back to normal function sooner, quicker. He can sustain less injury and recover faster if he's in shape. Again, likewise, any sport injury. So exercise lends the athlete the ability to recover faster if they're in shape. So let's look at what happens when we exercise. Okay. In this slide, you're looking at the axis going up. It's just overall fitness. So let's just say this line going up is overall fitness, and then the flat line is age. Okay, so the sedentary person, the one in the blue, as we get older, we're better physiologic shape. And then around 30, the average person, again, give or take some genetics in there, but give or take, most people globally live like this. Again, there's always exceptions. But around 30, 35, your body starts to feel its age. Okay. The person that has lived an active life, one that has been exercising, eating well, functions at a higher rate, but yet still starts to slow down at about the same age, but overall is in better shape throughout his or her life. Okay, so I'm assuming most of you coach kids, so you're up here on the top line here. They're functioning higher rate. They're able to put out more work per unit time. So this is a very general statement about being healthy, aerobic, and exercise fit versus someone who is sedentary or does not exercise. So you look at the components that the body uses to allow it to exercise. There's several units that can get in the way. We have a protein in our blood called hemoglobin, and it's very, very complex protein, but that's what carries the oxygen in your blood. And the hemoglobin comes in a measurement called grams, which is the weight of the hemoglobin. And men and women have about 14 grams per 100 milliliters of blood. So that number is pretty standard, and that the hemoglobin has to work to carry oxygen. And you've heard the word carbon monoxide. When you inhale from smoke like a fire, the carbon monoxide makes the hemoglobin not work. Then to move the oxygen to the muscle, the heart has to pump. And this is a very complex organ with valves and two sides, left and right heart. And this muscle has to be able to pump adequately to move blood to the muscle. Then the muscle has to use it in the cells. And then in the cells, you have the mitochondria, which is inside the cell that utilizes and creates the what we call ATP, or the energy to allow you to move and run. And then the lungs have to work. The lungs have to move in oxygen and take out carbon dioxide. So the lungs have to work. The hemoglobin has to be normal. The heart has to pump. The muscle has to utilize oxygen appropriately. And then the cell itself has to be working. And we could spend another hour talking about examples of each one of these variables, how they can go wrong, or something could happen to them that would impede exercise. Torn muscle, which is common in athletes, sprain. An athlete probably would not have problems with his or her cell, unlikely to lose hemoglobin. The athlete can have problems with their heart, a valvular problem or electrical problem. So the coach needs to be aware that primarily kids, athletes, going to have muscular or heart problems if they have exercise impairment. Let's pretend we're on a treadmill and you're standing still right here at the 0 mark. And what we're looking at is oxygen use of the body as we increase the speed and exercise time. So as you go from 0 to 2 minutes to 4 minutes to 5 minutes, etc. So the first 4 or 5 minutes, the individual that's untrained is relying on what we call anaerobic metabolism. His muscles have not started to increase blood flow through them. So he is utilizing oxygen very poorly the first 5 to 6 minutes. The trained athlete can start utilizing oxygen much quicker, more efficiently in very few minutes. Okay, this is why soccer and tennis and basketball, if you're trained, your first couple minutes, it takes you just a minute or two to get out of anaerobic. We call this an oxygen debt. I'm going to point out that it takes 2 to 3 to 4 minutes for blood vessels in the leg to open up, to begin blood flowing. So why they're not quite, the blood's not quite flowing like it should, the body's requiring, it's working off something called anaerobic metabolism, which is not as efficient and does not produce as much energy. So there's a period of time, first 5 minutes, the body's adjusting to the exercise. But fortunately, the trained individual can adjust very quickly. So the person that walks onto the soccer field for the first time that has not warmed up, he or she will remain in anaerobic metabolism for 4 to 5 minutes, maybe less if they're in very good shape. Then they become aerobic. And then if you work them too hard to their maximum workload, they're going to return to an anaerobic state. And remember, the two anaerobic states here, the body is not utilizing oxygen quite like it wants to or should for optimal output. So the body doesn't like to be in anaerobic shape. It's just not utilizing oxygen very well. And we produce something called lactic acid, which I'll talk about in a minute, which slows you down. So ideal coaching is to keep them in the aerobic section. So when you first start running or exercising, lifting weights or whatever, what's the first thing to change in the body, lungs or heart? And that's always a very common question. Well, it's the heart. You have neurons and receptors in your arms and legs and knees and ankles and arms, and that tells the brain that you're starting to do work. And the first response is increase heart rate and increase what we call stroke volume. Stroke volume is the volume of blood coming out of the heart for every heartbeat. And most people that are sedentary, that's about 60 milliliters, 60 teaspoons. Those that work out are moving 80 to 100 per beat. So the heart is the first organ to respond in exercise, and then the heart has its limitations. Let's define some terms here. Cardiac output, that means the amount of blood that's pumped per minute. So in 1 minute, most of us, they're listening to me, pump about 4 to 6 liters per minute. Let's use 5 as a typical average textbook normal. And as you work, as you run faster and faster and faster, or you turn the treadmill, go up faster and faster and faster, the heart reaches a point where it cannot put out any more blood. It's maximum output. And at this point, most people get exhausted and stop. But if you push it, the only way the body can produce more blood is increase heart rate. So at this point here, as you see, is the maximum workload of that particular person. And we're going to fix this. We're going to make this better here shortly. So you get your kids out there on the field and you work them maximally, they're going to get to a point where their heart cannot pump any more oxygen, blood or oxygen. And then also while they're running and training, we have blood pressure. Remember, normal blood pressure is about 120/80, which we see right here. As you exercise, the top number has to go up, and that's healthy. And the lower number doesn't change. Okay. And the reason for that is blood flows as a result of pressure gradients. So if the top number is high and the lower number is low, the farther apart they are, the faster the blood flows, which is what you need in sports. So people that are healthy during exercise will have a blood pressure of 160, 170, 180, the top number, and that's perfectly okay. It's when the lower number gets high also during exercise, you have disease state. So if you're doing a stress test and your blood pressure goes up, both numbers, your doctor will stop you because that's abnormal. But in kids, adults, everybody, the top number should go up. And then as the heart increases, then the lungs start moving more air. The volume of air that we move per breath is called tidal volume. It's right here. It increases first, and the rate. So heart rate, the depth of your breathing, and then your respiratory rate changes in sequence, three different things. So you're looking at, as you do more work, just pay attention to the purple here, your depth of your breathing increase. When you first start exercising, you will start burning your carbohydrates. And that, again, your breads, your beans, your fruits, your pastas. That is the fuel your body's using when you first start exercising. Again, this is anaerobic. The body's not very efficiently burning oxygen here. As you warm up, 3, 4, 5 minutes into your warm up, your body will then start utilizing fats. And this is where weight control comes in. Fat cells are very tenacious, they're very resistant to get consumed. As we can see, our bellies and hips on women and bellies on men, those fat cells are large and they're hard to sometimes decrease. But aerobic, where you work right here, and then if you maximally work, you work to your maximum level, you're going to start burning protein. Again, that's at the cost of muscle mass, muscle fibers. And the patient or the person will stop you typically. Now, again, your mindset might take you further or farther on and keep burning, but you're going to eventually burn a lot of protein. That's why marathon runners typically are very thin, in part because of protein utilization. But again, going from no work to faster, all the way up to maximum, you're burning different types of food as you go up the workload. We have a measurement that is very important to overall look at the overall fitness of somebody. And this big word, oxygen consumption, VO2 max, is what that is the most oxygen you can burn per kilogram per minute. And I would imagine most sedentary people, and this is a measurement that Kyle and I can measure in our exercise lab. It's pretty common. You require some equipment. Most people have 30 to 35 milliliters of oxygen per kilogram per minute. An athlete can reach up to 70 to 80. Remember Lance Armstrong, the biker, he was probably 110. So the higher the number, the more aerobically fit you are. And there's no way to measure this on the sports field or the basketball court. This is a measurement only obtained in a lab. What do you call those? Somebody fit watches. Some of these fit watches you can buy has this measurement. That's just a rough estimate. It's not accurate whatsoever. So Fitbit, things like that. This is a laboratory measurement that you typically wouldn't do unless you had the lab, but it's a good indication of overall fitness. Now, this is a little harder concept, but it's important. Again, on the y-axis, axis going up is your body's burning oxygen. Okay. And on this axis, on the flat axis, is the work. Faster running, speed on the treadmill, whatever. So as you do more and more work, your body's burning more and more oxygen. About halfway to your capacity to do work, there's a little area we call anaerobic threshold, AT. At this point, your body is starting to produce lactic acid. It's starting to get tired. And you can stay there and continue working with not a lot of problem, but be aware that your body is shifting its metabolism to produce this acid that interferes with muscle function. And then if you keep working your athlete all the way to their maximum workload, and remember this VO2 max, they'll stop. They have to. They just can't go on. So our job here is to make the body more efficient by moving this point, what we call anaerobic threshold, up the road here a bit. And I'll show you that in a second. So here I am on the treadmill, or here I'm at the side of the field. I take off running. If I keep running faster and faster and faster, I'm going to generate lactic acid. My body is not going to utilize oxygen quite as well, and I'm going to start burning protein, and then I will stop. I will poop out. So this kind of complicated slide shows a couple things here. This line here is the amount of air you move per minute. We call that minute ventilation. At rest, that's about 5 gallons or about 5 liters. As you run faster and faster and faster, you move more air, almost linearly. Then when you become about halfway to your capacity, you start moving a lot of air. You really start breathing heavy, deep, fast breaths. That point where you start breathing fast and deep is the anaerobic threshold. Meanwhile, you're burning more and more oxygen like you're supposed to. And this red mark here, that's where that lactic acid starts building up. And muscle don't like that. Muscle does not like this lactic acid. And that's why the athlete starts to tire out as the lactic acid builds up. There's a point in exercise where things start changing. So here we are in a normal person. And I take you on 6 weeks of aerobic exercise. Let's say 4 days a week, we go to our maximum heart rate, 80% of our maximum heart rate. I'll talk about that here shortly. And I'm going to do you 4 days a week for 6 weeks. You're going to raise your anaerobic threshold. You're going to raise that point where your body starts producing lactic acid. You're going to raise it up where the athlete can tolerate exercise longer, and the VO2 max goes up. So the body becomes much, much more efficient. And the primary change in the body is the ability of the heart to pump more blood vessels, and at the cell level, the cell utilizes the oxygen more efficiently. So exercise increases the body's ability to move oxygen and consume oxygen more efficiently. That's the bottom line in exercise, aerobic fitness. So your non-athlete here, and then after a proper coaching and working, they're going to improve themselves. And they do, so they can produce better sport. Here is when you burn energy, there's different types of sources of energy the body uses. These words here, like the muscle has something called glycogen. The muscle has triglycerides, and the muscle has some of these amino acids and blood sugar right there. And you can see that when you're working very little, increase in your work and maximum workload, the body source of energy comes from primary glycogen. And you can deplete that very quickly. That's why during my marathon running, every 60 minutes, I replenish my glycogen with those packets, you can get, or candy, or a banana, something sweet that's concentrated with glucose. So, because that's your main source of energy. The other sources are used, but it's mainly blood glycogen, and this will be depleted, and the athlete has to stop. If you don't feed the athlete, this gets depleted, and they have to go into the protein of the muscle group to work to get energy, and that again depletes muscle fiber. So aerobic fitness simply causes the cardiovascular system to adapt to more work, to be more efficient. And here we go again. We've got this young lady here laying on the couch in a sedentary lifestyle. Every heartbeat, she puts out 65 teaspoons of blood. And she's limited because her heart can't increase its work all that much. And we call how much blood per beat something called stroke volume. This lady, who is physically fit, aerobically fit, is now putting out 100 teaspoons of blood per beat and can run a much longer distance. Again, this is adaptation from aerobic fitness. This is why you run your kids and you train your kids to become, over time, you work them to get aerobically fit so they can look like this girl. They can put out more blood per unit at a time, versus she couldn't run a half a mile, but she could run 20. It's all because the heart's ability to pump more blood. So if we look at, excuse me, the Q over here represents the amount of blood that the heart puts out per minute. Recall that's about 5, let's say, gallons per minute. Okay. And this is work down here. Okay, so you work your athlete, keep working them to the maximum workload. The heart cannot put out any more blood. It just has reached its maximum stroke volume, or the maximum amount of blood it can pump per minute. The only thing it can do is increase heart rate. If you keep asking that kid to run harder and faster, all he can do is his heart rate can go up to 180, 160, 170, 180 to keep up the need for the blood for the body. But his heart is not giving any more blood. So, and this is not very efficient use of the heart to make it beat faster to meet the needs of the workload. So aerobic fitness will fix that. You make the kid aerobic, he's going to have a larger stroke volume, or again, that's the amount of blood the heart can pump per beat. You can put out more blood and become more efficient and a better athlete. So here we're looking at heart rate on the y-axis. Okay, heart rate, and you're looking at the body's consumption of oxygen, how much it's burning. The red is, the blue is the sedentary person. So as his heart rate goes up, they burn oxygen, but the athlete can burn it more efficiently and more of it. Okay, so there's some benefits. So his heart rate goes up, and the athlete, he or she burns more oxygen more efficiently, thus doing better work. And this, again, this would be running, weightlifting, soccer, not so much golf, but you know, the moving fast and weightlifting, things like that. So here we're looking at on this axis here, you're looking at how much blood the heart can pump per minute. Okay. And here on the flat axis is how much oxygen being burned by the body. You can ignore the numbers, just understand the concept here. The sedentary person, as his heart increases and his burning more and more oxygen, he can get to a point where he can't do no more. He stops. But the athlete can go way up here and burn a lot of oxygen at high heart rate and high output. So these people are very efficient, and they can work a long time. They can work a long time. Now, this complicated slide is showing that lactic acid that builds up. The untrained individual starts running, will, as they run, they get a buildup of lactic acid earlier in their workup. And as lactic acid builds up to strenuous exercise, that will stop that muscle. That will build up where the patient or the person stops. He just can't do it. The athletic person starts burning starts creating lactic acid much later in their exercise, much later, and can tolerate the buildup much longer. They build it up, but they can tolerate, their body can adapt to that. So again, one of the reasons we stop running is because the lactic acid buildup in our bloodstream. So looking at leg movement, here's what you're looking at here on this axis going up is consumption of glucose or sugar by the body. Leg glucose. This is someone running track. And if they burst out running fast, they reach their O2 max very quickly. They in heavy exercise, they'll consume a lot of their leg glucose quickly, and they stop. But you hope they're good enough aerobically to sprint fast enough to win the short track and field tryout competition. But at the end of their run, they've depleted their glucose in their muscle. Whereas moderate to mild exercise, you don't deplete your muscle sugar, the sugar or glucose in your muscles. Okay, these people that are running track can run fast quickly for a long period of time because they're not only aerobically fit, but they're anaerobically fit, and they just can do better. But they have to stop. They can't do that. They can't sustain that amount of that type of running. Where the marathon runner and the mile jogger can. So here are, from a physiologic standpoint, the benefits of aerobic exercise. This first thing in, the heart pumps better, more blood. The heart gets bigger and the heart rate slows down. I'm 69 years old and my heart rate runs in the 60s because I run. Now, in my days when I ran more, my heart rate was in the 50s because for each heart rate, I was pumping more blood because my heart was bigger. Now I'm slowing down because my job is not allowing me to run like it used to. The other benefits of exercise is this word right here. Oxidative enzymes are the ability of the body to utilize oxygen and burn it more efficiently. The cell, the tissue has cells in it and can utilize oxygen more efficiently because it has larger cells. And blood flow has less resistance as the blood flows through the body, and the body can carry more oxygen. So there's really a lot of benefits to exercise that makes the athlete good when they're aerobically fit. And this busy slide just shows you a whole bunch of reasons why we should exercise and the results of aerobic fitness. And I'm not going to go through each one of these, but impress upon you, there are huge benefits to exercise, regardless of what it is. Lots of benefits. Now, how about the athlete's diet? Okay. If you're going to work them to their maximum load, if you're going to work them where they really work out, you want to have a lot of carbohydrates on board. Because when you're working at maximum workload, you're utilizing carbs. If you're working them modestly to about 50% of their capacity, or just a moderate workout, they're going to use all their carbs, proteins, and fats. And then the body's going to start using it to very slow in carbohydrates. What we're looking at here is, again, is muscle use of carbohydrates. So as the muscles start working, it burns carbohydrates. It can consume a normal diet. Again, around here it likes to burn fats. And then if you work up here, it likes to be replenished with carbohydrates. So let's start over here and say, when your athlete starts working out, a low carbohydrate diet is okay. Then they need more of a normal diet. That's that 50% carbohydrates, 30% fats, and 25% protein. But if you're going to work them to death, work them really high, not death, but really high, they need a high carbohydrate diet. That's what this slide's trying to say. I didn't start out explaining that correctly. So they have to have a certain, a good carbohydrate diet if you're going to work them to their maximum workload to sustain their muscles. What happens if you stop exercising? Everything goes to pot quickly. All these big words saying all the benefits from the exercise, the muscle size of the muscle fibers, the ability to move blood through capillaries, those enzymes that burn oxygen more efficiently, all that stuff just abruptly stops. So here's someone worked out for 24 months, build up quite an aerobic capacity, and then within 6 weeks got back to their sedentary state. So you got to sustain the fitness of the training to maintain the benefits. Otherwise, the body quickly returns to a sedentary state. Sad but true. So the bottom line is, when you're training your athlete, two things are happening. The body's adaptation to move oxygen by a bigger heart moves more blood more efficiently. Okay. And then the muscles are utilizing the oxygen more efficiently, because there's enzymes, there's proteins that come to play here that say this muscle is going to use the oxygen more efficiently, so it's going to perform better. So one goal is to make this system more efficient. Creates more capillaries, more places for the blood to flow to. The muscle utilizes it better. Then the second goal is the muscle itself that you're using becomes better oxygen consumption, better use of oxygen. If it's weightlifting, soccer, kicking, whatever, the particular muscle that you're working with becomes better at using oxygen and receives more blood flow. So there's two huge changes in the body with exercise. That is the heart, and then the specific muscles that you're aiming to work with. So A good athlete needs both aerobic fitness and anaerobic fitness. And that comes from working out, feeding appropriately, carbohydrates, and working them appropriately. So that's that. So what does this mean for you as a coach? You may not be out there working. You may be hanging out on the sideline, but either way, you need at least 30 minutes, of aerobic exercise 3 to 4 times a week to be heart healthy. And we want to work our heart to about 70% of target heart rate. The target heart rate you can calculate by taking 220, number 220, minus your age, and they take that number by 70% of that number is your target heart rate. And I'll show you that in the next slide. But all of us in this listening area that's not out there working ourselves like our athletes should do at least 3 to 4 times a week, at least 30. The reason 30 minutes is important is those fat burning enzymes don't kick in until about 20 minutes. So, because you're in anaerobic state, remember that. So once you slide into the aerobic state, your enzymes start burning fat cells, and this makes the heart pump a little better. So this is a healthy prescription for normal people, everyday people. And here's your training zone. Say I'm 60, I'm 70. So I need to get my heart rate up to 105 at least, somewhere between 105 and 135. And I have a Garmin watch that I can monitor my heart rate while I'm running. And I've run for so many years, I don't look at it anymore because I know I get about 120, 125. There's no benefit going over that, because that's where you're going to start burning proteins and then become exhausted. So let's say some of the coaches listening are 30. Again, you want to get at least up to 133 and a maximum 170 for training. Now back here in your kids, you're a high school kid. Again, this doesn't matter where you live in this planet. This stuff, this is for everybody. And there might be exception. And I can only speak about running because this is what I've done my whole life. I've ran many when Ethiopian runners always win the races. Their genetics and their system's a little different, and I can't speak to that. I don't know if this rule would play out for them, but your kids, your football, soccer, rugby, you want them to get at least 140, and 180 is the top end. That's their training zone. So here's all of us that are not working out every day, at least 3 to 4 times a week, and we stay in this zone. So why don't I stop sharing my screen? And first of all, I hope that was helpful. And are there any, we can take some questions, the discussion at this time. Is there any relation to body burning protein? Demir again has a good answer here. If you can all see that. To burn proteins, you have to have a really high state of performance. We talked about that. Most of us don't burn our protein, and that's why, because when you get to the level of burning proteins, you're going to become exhausted quickly. And he's right. Marathon runners are not thin because they burn their proteins because they run it. It's more complicated than that, but it does play into that. Protein use and lactic production. I see that the program is not printed my words. Again, Demore is talking about ATP, which is the product of the cell utilizing the oxygen, and that's what gives us energy.
May I ask a question?
Yes.
We've seen occasions where very fit athletes collapse and dies in the field or have to be resuscitated. What could be the problem in that case?
There are a couple things. and we just had an incident, a football player about a month ago, when you have blunt trauma to the chest wall, it depends on where you're at in the cardiac cycle. When the heart pumps, the atrium, the top of the heart goes first and the ventricles pump. There's electrical sequence there that if you hit the heart chest at the right time, it can disrupt that rhythm or disrupt the electrical impulse and the heart stops. In football, and you see that, or the child or the athlete might have a congenital defect that causes a disruption of blood flow or the electrical conduction system, and they just abruptly stop. There are several syndromes that kids have. They have no symptoms, and they're out there running, and all of a sudden, the electrical rhythm conduction system stops and the heart stops. But a lot of it's from blunt chest trauma, and the heart is simply not damaged, but the bluntness causes electrical conduction to stop. And if they get counter shocked quickly, or I know they don't promote the sternal thump, you don't see that anymore. But over my years of experience, I have used that out on the field and in the hospital. Well, I haven't had a defibrillator, and has worked. The American Heart does not promote that, but in my experience, it still works to get thump on the chest wall to restart it. But generally, if they drop on the field, it's a congenital defect of some sort of syndrome where the heart is not functioning correctly, or it's the blunt chest trauma. At least that's what my experience been. And if they're resuscitated quickly on the field, they'll survive. That's why we have defibrillators and people trained that should be on the bed field somewhere. Do y'all have CPR training as coaches?
Not quite. Not
Okay.
everybody. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's something a coach could aim for. Defibrillators are expensive, but again, the quicker you reach them and get them aid, the quicker the heart resumes its function. And like this guy that just recently dropped dead playing football here in America. What team was he on, Kyle?
Buffalo Bills.
Buffalo Bills. He got right, they got right to him, and he survived. Now he's able to come back to play football. So, but if he laid there 4 to 5 minutes, he would sustain brain death, and he would not have been the same guy he is today. There's some basketball players you see often sometimes dropping, because that's generally a congenital defect or genetical, some sort of congenital defect in their heart while they're working out, maximum workload.
So you recommend every coach to go through a CPR training?
Absolutely. I think that would be a high priority across all your countries, because that coach, he or she, would be a life-saving agent for that person that goes down. If they're pulseless on the field, that would be their best chance of reviving that patient. I've seen a lot of cardiac arrests, and the only way they survive is quick CPR and defibrillation with the defibrillator.
Is it something that you can do online?
No.
Has to be
There's
physical.
some people trying it, but you got to have a dummy to practice on. There are some companies doing it online. I don't know how they're doing it. I've taught a great number of these programs over the years, and it's something you just got to do. The dummies, kind of expensive. you can find some used dummies, and then you got to ventilate the patient. You got to know how to, adequately blow in their mouths and fill their lungs up. But fortunately, we don't, there's a very small percentage of athletes dropping on the field, but it just takes one to shake everybody up. John, was this the sort of the material that you think the coaches needed?
Yes. Yeah. Probably if you could maybe explain a little bit more in terms of enhancing that heart capacity, some of the recommended ways or exercises beside the diet. Yeah. To enhance your endurance.
Well, it all goes back to whatever it takes to raise the heart rate in that training zone. And that could be running, treadmill, biking, but it has to be sustained. So to increase the cardiovascular adaptation, it takes a sustained exercise, 30 minutes or more, and working in that training zone. So again, your soccer and your rugby and your tennis that have short durations, it's better to train that sport, but at the same time add sustained running, treadmilling, biking for a period of time that doesn't stop. That's what's going to adapt that heart. What they're doing is building their anaerobic abilities with short bursts of energy. But put them on a bike, put them on a treadmill, put them on a I'm not a recumbent bike. I don't think we work as well on a recumbent bike we do as an upright bike or a treadmill or run.
Mm-hmm.
But it goes back, John, to sustaining the heart rate in that training zone for an amount of time. That's just how simple it can get. It's just sustain the heart rate for a period of time. That's what makes us aerobic and adapt to better consumption of oxygen, which is what we want.
Right.
So what about running in your heat? Your country, your continent, or your countries are hot right now. There's two schools of thought about hydration. One is the traditional, you hydrate well and you run, you keep hydrating. The International Marathon Association is now promoting hydrating when you're thirsty, using thirst as an indicator for hydration. I have written on that topic, and I'm not sure. I believe in, I hydrate prior to my run and the run, but in your heat, what do you do? How do you hydrate your kids?
Thirst, definitely. Just if you feel thirsty, you got to take water.
Yeah. I mean, you provide water the whole time, the whole workout.
Yeah, people carry water with them to the gym.
Yeah.
Or sometimes after the workout is when somebody will go for water. But of course, it depends on individual people. There are people who like taking water on a more frequent basis, and there are those who want to take after their exercises.
Yeah. And then, recovery science is a whole nother topic. How the body recovers after the exercise. We have a 3-credit course we just got approved called Recovery Science to talk about after the sport stops, the exercise stops, what goes on with the body and that type of stuff. Because I know my marathon, it takes 8 hours sometimes for my body to recover completely.
That would be a nice topic.
Yeah, recovery science is a whole another lecture. Let's see. How do we detect that let's see. How do we detect that we can see a specialty cardiologist? How do we know? That's a good question. I think the question is, when do we need to see a cardiologist? Which goes back to a good, thorough pre-game, pre-sport physical exam. But most of them that I've seen, my kids go undergo, they're very, 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 what's the word? Not much to it. I think if I had a brother that had some congenital heart defect, I would probably seek a cardiologist, or I had a symptom of chest pain or a rare symptom while I'm working out. The kids won't usually admit to that. I'd see a cardiologist, but that's a problem with some of these disorders. You have no symptoms until you actually work. But if I had family history, I'd probably would see a cardiologist if I was an athlete in my younger days. But the athletic the school exam they get is nothing. They won't pick up anything. But fortunately, the percentages of kids dropping dead on the field are very, very small. And likewise with marathon runners. And any athlete, the numbers are very small.
All right. So guys, any more questions for Dennis? Or any observation?
Good afternoon.
Afternoon to you.
My name is Mary Ocheng. I coach ladies rugby here in Kenya at Impala. Now, does it, with regards to the maximum oxygen that one can take and how the training schedule should be, how does the gender play into it? Whether you're coaching men or coaching women, how does the gender affect what we've discussed today? Thank you.
That's a good question. The question I think is how gender plays into VO2 max, and it would be a hard answer because they're about the same based on their muscle mass. I mean, a thinner female might reach their maximum consumption quicker, but is there a difference between gender? I'm thinking out loud here. In VO2 max, in my experience, there hasn't been. Demir, do you have a response to that? Because I'm not recalling any reason there would be a difference.
As far as I know, the VO2 max is related to the amount of blood. So women have smaller, less liters of blood in the body than a male. So I think there's not a big difference, because it's the amount of oxygen in a certain amount of blood, which is a liter. And so a woman has less liters than a male. So if it is measured in percentage, there's no difference.
Yeah, that's the times I've measured them, I've never seen differences.
Okay, thank you.
Good question.
All right, any more concerns or questions? If not, then let me take this chance to thank Dennis for the presentation and availing his time and his experience to share with us. On my side, I really enjoyed and learned a lot. And I believe the group members also did the same. And looking forward to having such a session with you the next few weeks or months.
Would love to.
Schedule.
I enjoyed this. And again, thank you very much. And keep cool, and we'll keep warm.
Thank you so much, and have a good day.
All right, bye-bye.
Bye.